Hey guys, today I'm down in Southern California, finally hands-on with the all-new Volvo EX90. This is Volvo's flagship. It's going to be the most expensive Volvo on sale in the US, and it also is showing the direction of Volvo's future dedicated platform EV models. Although we should probably talk about that dedicated platform bit a little bit later in the video. But up front, it definitely looks like a modern Volvo. We have the same sort of Volvo logo with blanked off grille design that we find in the C40 and XC40. Check out these really cool Thor's hammer headlights though. Here's what's going on. On the inside we have mechanical shutters, and the mechanical shutters have the LED daytime running lights on the outside of them. So when you turn on the headlights, the shutters actually open up, revealing the full LED headlights, and then they do the reverse when you turn them off. Turn signal, that's down there lower on the bumper. But check out this long hood. This is enormously long up front. This is the kind of hood where you could probably put, I don't know, an inline 8 engine under there. A lot of that has to do with Volvo's dedication to safety. We do have a small storage area under there, which I'll show you in a moment, but I suspect that more of that has to do with the fact that this platform is the new generation Volvo platform, which we may also find under the bodies of other plug-in hybrid, perhaps Volvos. Volvo has not been overly specific on exactly what may or may not share this platform, so this is guesswork, but I suspect that the next time we're going to see a plug-in hybrid new Volvo on the market, it may be somewhat related to this. So it's entirely possible that that long hood profile has some basis in future uses for the platform. Around the back, we have full LED taillights, just as you'd expect. Of course, LED turn signals, LED backup lights, etc. And a design that is at the same time modern, but also definitely distinctively Volvo. So you can certainly see how the XC90 turned into this EX90. Now, it is important to remember that Volvo said when the EX90 launched that it is not replacing the XC90. So the current XC90 is going to continue on sale, and it also means we should be seeing another XC90 soon. Exactly what that means, though, we have absolutely no idea. Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be plug-in hybrid? We have no idea about any of that. But let's start out here by taking a look under the hood. We'll show you what's going on under there, because this is a little bit more of a frubby than a front trunk, I would say, or a front cubby, if you're wondering about the origin of that. Under here, you'll see this storage bin. We have a hood that opens extraordinarily tall. This doesn't have a separate lid like we find in so many little front trunk cubbies, and it is a little bit bigger than I initially thought it would be. I think part of that is simply due to the amount of space we have under this hood. When I was able to look under some of these panels, this entire front end here basically is all empty crash structure. There's of course going to be heat pump and other stuff located under there, and an electric motor. To tell how high and huge that hood is, front electric motor is going to be standard because all EX90s are going to have standard dual motors on board, and a big battery pack, 111 kilowatt hours, giving every EX90 308 miles of range. You have your choice of 402 horsepower or 510 horsepower. But there's more of a weird twist going on here because they're not using the same motors dialed up to 11. Oddly, the lower horsepower model has a more powerful front electric motor and a less powerful rear motor. It's about 170 horsepower in the rear, a little bit more on the front. This model with 510 horsepower has a 272 horsepower motor in the back, and then the rest is happening up front. So more power on the rear axle in the performance dual motor version. It's going to be about a $5,000 upcharge to get the performance dual motor variant. But because the tires don't appear to change, let's take a look at those now, it doesn't seem to have an impact on range. So we get the exact same EPA ratings on both of them. These are 265/35 R22s. These are Pirelli Scorpion tires. This is kind of a unique wheel. They did say that you can remove these aero covers, although I'm not sure what it would look like with the aero covers removed. I'm not sure how easy it is to remove those aero covers either. Let's go ahead and find out, actually, if anybody is wondering. They do just snap off. Oh, actually pretty easily. Yeah, so there you go. That's what those wheels look like if you snap off the aero cover. Let me know how you feel about that. I think actually they look a little bit better with the aero cover on, but I'm not the biggest fan of the white accent design that we find on these wheels. Actually appears to be pretty easy to snap on and snap off, so that's kind of a handy touch if you want to clean those yourself. Actually appears to be pretty easy. Now let's take a look at the inside. The EX90 uses an all-new driver's seat design, and the big change really, I think, is the controller here. It's a square knob, and this functions as a multi-use digital control, basically. So you press this button and it changes what the knob does, whether that's tilting the seat cushion or reclining the seat, etc. We have a manual thigh cushion extension. I think that's just fine. We have inflatable bolsters in the back and a massage function. We also now have Volvo's first electric adjustable tilt telescopic steering column, although the range of motion is a little bit shorter than I thought it would be. And jumping into the back, this front seat actually is quite far back, so I'll scoot over here where I was sitting earlier. There is a reasonable amount of room inside, lots of headroom in the second row because this big glass roof is standard. That's one thing I actually would love to see a change in. I would love to see maybe a steel roof, maybe a traditional power sunroof, or at least an electric cover or something like that, because you do get a lot of sun in here. That's not so bad in Sweden, but down here in Southern California, it is a little bit toasty. Now, this has the 7-seat package, so we get 3 people in the middle, 2 people in the way back. And what's cool about this is that, like we've seen in other Volvo models, it's a 40-20-40 second row seat. Not only does that mean that this folds independently of the outboard seats, it also slides forward and backward independently because it has an integrated child bolster seat into it. So once your kids age out of the forward-facing or rear-facing 5-point harness kind of seats, they can actually use this with the integrated shoulder belt. And if you want to put a rear-facing or a forward-facing child seat in the middle position, this integrated shoulder belt actually helps keep it a little bit more front and center, and you can have this seat a little bit closer to mom and dad up front. Of course, if you aren't going to do that, we have 4 sets of latch anchors, not just for the outboard second row seating positions, but also for the third row, which I will attempt to hop back into. See how good my contortionist skills are today, because as you can see right down here, I'll let Travis come down here, it is a little bit constricted down here in the footwell. The EX90 is meant to be a faithful electric interpretation of an XC90 basically, even though Volvo's not exactly quite calling it that way, because in their lineup they're going to have XC90 and they're going to have EX90, just as we've seen some of the electric and non-electric versions. But in this generation, obviously, even though it doesn't share that much currently with the XC90, they wanted it to be very similar in terms of dimensions. So very similar headroom, legroom, and cargo room figures to the current XC90. Now, I don't know exactly why there's kind of that little shelf back there in the legroom of the third row, but it probably has something to do with the position of the battery systems in the vehicle, or of course the cargo area in the back, and the fact that we now have a power folding third row in here. I would actually probably rather have had a manual folding third row, although these seats do move pretty quickly. Let's go ahead and press these buttons here so we can see how quickly that moves. See, it's a relatively rapid folding mechanism, and the power mechanism, as we see in other vehicles, does occupy some space under that floor. So obviously that's where some of that is going. Back here, of course, these are gonna scoot back in there a little bit more easily. And then under this floor, we have a surprising amount of storage area. I know it's a little bit difficult on the camera to see this, but we have this weird foam divider. If you take that foam divider out, we have an enormously deep storage well here. I was actually able to put a 22-inch roller bag in here completely under the load floor. So, you know, if I were you and I bought an EX90, the very first thing I would do would be to throw this little foam divider away and just actually use that as a bigger storage area. If you've been inside any Volvo recently, this interior is going to feel very familiar, but also a little bit more modern than something like the current generation XC90 or XC60. A lot of the basics are here though. We still have an instrument cluster right where it belongs, just in front of the steering wheel. We still have a head-up display above there. We still have a center channel speaker, and we still have this vertically oriented screen, just like in the rest of the Volvo lineup. But when you go a little bit closer, you'll notice that there are definitely some significant changes. The first thing I think is actually build quality and material quality. It is really high in the EX90. This is definitely a little bit above the current generation XC90. Some of these detailed seams are really hard to replicate, like the consistent gap we have between this chrome strip running across the dashboard and this very light wood trim. This is actually wood trim. It's a bit difficult to see on camera, but that's actually wood trim there. Then above that, we get the air vents. No weird digital air vents. You can actually rotate them around with your hand there. Then we get a fabric strip on top of that, and then the stitched imitation leather on the dashboard. This is using an all-vegan leather interior in this particular model. It's based on recycled plastics and some natural oils from corn and other plant products. We have a large glove box right over there on that side, and lots of premium materials running on the doors and on the dashboard. More of that stitched leather, intricate laser cut speaker grills for the Bowers & Wilkins audio system. The only hard plastics you're going to find on the door are down there at the bottom of the door to help improve durability. This model has this two-tone imitation leather upholstery, a little Swedish flag there, kind of a cool touch. So it's kind of an ivory and off gray. I think that my favorite fabric, though, is actually going to be the fabric, and that's that wool upholstery. It's a little bit less than half wool, of course, to help reduce pilling. So it's wool and recycled polyester. These head restraints are fixed in place, but they actually have surround sound speakers inside, which is why they have a Bowers & Wilkins logo on the side. We have a very consistent seat design in the EX90. So front seat, second row seat, and third row seats, they all look very, very similar. And we find adjustable height shoulder belts for both the first and second row. The big thing, though, again, is that huge glass roof running right there over everything. And I'm really surprised that we see that here in a way, because Volvo is a company that's really obsessed with safety, and they've had to do a lot of structural reinforcement to be able to have such an enormous sheet of glass on the top. Up here, we actually have some physical controls. So physical controls for things like the map lights, etc. But most of the controls are going to be found right here in this Google infotainment system. This is running the latest version of the Google Automotive Operating System, of course. It is going to support Apple CarPlay. That's going to come in 2025. I will say that there are some bugs in this system, so if you want your software to be bug-free, you might want to wait until 2025, where we're going to see some significant updates to the software. They've redesigned the home screen, so over here we have a media module. Over here we have a Bluetooth phone module. You can, of course, connect your different Bluetooth devices there. Over here we have recently used apps like the built-in Tidal, streaming media there, your phone interface, the Google Voice Assistant right there in the middle where you can command things like your climate control, etc. On this side, we have some contextual buttons. So right now, we have the 360-degree 3D camera. You can see that the processor is much faster in this system than it has been before. There's Travis hanging out over there. And then depending on what you're doing in the vehicle, some of the buttons may change. So as you're driving along, instead of camera, you'll actually get the performance mode option. If you want to know more on this software, be sure and check back, because we're going to have a more detailed review on the software. Pretty much your basic Google connected system. There's a Google App Store. You can add apps like Waze, YouTube Music, things like that. All those apps can be native in the system. And that's part of why Volvo is not offering Android Auto integration, just CarPlay, and that's coming soon. Again, more of that real wood trim over there. You'll see that Bowers & Wilkins speaker right there at the top. Head-up display over there, and then the new Volvo steering wheel design over on this side. Big Volvo logo right there in the middle. I'm a little bit disappointed we don't have a wrapped airbag cover. It's a hard plastic design. I do appreciate, though, that we get a lot of different designs on this instrument cluster. So you can have a moving map display over there. You can have your safety displays, or more of a minimal display. And if we were out on the road driving along, you would get actual lane information, and you can see the other cars moving along, that sort of thing. Very trendy there. Down over here, we have a button to control that multifunction display. Also some of the cruise control buttons. The lane centering button, they call that the Pro Pilot system. On this side, we find track forward, backward, volume, up, down, a voice command button. And then when you're touching on these buttons, you'll actually see what those buttons do up there on the screen up above. This is a combination physical button bank and touch button bank. So the system knows what you're after based on what you have touched, and then it knows that you've pressed the option because you've actually clicked the button down. It's a little bit difficult to see, but there are some additional icons that could indicate future features, like the automatic steering button. That's the one I'm intrigued by, because this should have the next generation of Volvo autonomous features baked into the hardware, but we don't see that software available just yet. I'll talk about that in just a second. Moving down from there, we find a big Qi wireless charging mat, the volume and power knob for the infotainment system, more of that wood trim. It's very light and it's very bright outside, so I apologize for that. 2 big cup holders. I suspect that the big American takeout drinks would have no problem fitting in there. You can now use your iPhone as a key, and this one has been registered with this vehicle thanks to the ultra-wideband technology. We have a soft armrest there with some storage inside, and then not quite a flat floor arrangement here. You can see there's a storage tray underneath there. It's carpeted so that way things don't clank around. I appreciate that. We then have a little elastic strap to hold things in place, and then some USB-C charge-only ports there. But it's not a completely flat floor like you might find in some vehicles out there. However, if we move on back to the rear seats, you'll notice that we do in fact have a flat floor back here, so we don't have any sort of bump that you might find in converted EV platforms. Big air vents going on here in the center console, and quad zone automatic climate controls found in the back. But I got distracted. Let's go back to that autonomy conversation, because that's why we have this big LiDAR bump right there on the outside. I do have to say Volvo has done a good job integrating it. It looks better integrated than I thought it would be, but it is still kind of an unusual look, and it is certainly something that people will notice as you're driving along. If we take a look at this right from the front end, you can see definite bump right there in the middle, but they've really disguised it a little bit with the black surround there on the roof, and that's going to be black regardless of the exterior color of the EX90. We don't know exactly what that is going to do for us, and we don't know exactly how it's going to integrate with all the cameras we find around. So we have cameras there, forward-looking cameras, backward-looking cameras, etc. Lots of ultrasonic sensors all the way around. And Volvo has said it's going to be used in future autonomy as well as more active safety systems. We just don't know exactly how that's all going to work together yet. So how much is it going to cost? Well, it's going to start just over $81,000, including destination. The price tag before destination is just under $80,000. This is going to be built in South Carolina, so it's going to be built in the United States, but we don't know whether that will mean it will qualify for any portion of the EV tax credit on purchases. And if it did, it would only be the absolute base model with no additional options, because the cap is $80,000 before destination. So only the base model would qualify, and only by about $5. I would expect that Volvo is not chasing that tax credit, because 2026 is probably going to roll around and you know they're going to add more than $5 to the base MSRP. But then keep in mind, most of the competition doesn't qualify for that tax credit either. The Tesla Model X, yes, it qualifies for one, but only if you get a 2-row model. The moment you add a 3rd row, it's out of qualification. You can get half the tax credit in a Rivian R1S. We don't know whether that will survive until January 1st, 2025, but at the moment you do get $3,750 back. Unless, of course, you go over $80,000, which is pretty easy in the Rivian, and then that is going to disappear. Now, in my mind, the Rivian is the closest direct competitor, at least for the moment, to the EX90. I think soon a closer competitor is going to be the Cadillac Vistiq. That is their approximately similarly sized 3-row EV coming soon, although we don't have any details on that or on pricing just yet. This also is about the same size as the Kia EV9, but it is significantly more premium on the inside. I mean, just look at the spec sheet. Adaptive air suspension, more horsepower, etc. Very different vehicle than we find in the Kia EV9. The EV9 is going to charge faster than the Volvo. Volvo says this will go 10% to 80% in 30 minutes. It's definitely going to be faster in the EV9 thanks to its 800-volt architecture, but this is going to charge faster at a Tesla supercharger station. Charging happens back here, interestingly on the same side of the vehicle as the Tesla charge connector, and because this is a 400-volt nominal system, it's going to charge faster on those lower voltage, higher current stations. To be honest, as good as I find the charging speeds on the eGMP platform vehicles from Genesis, Hyundai, and Kia, now that Tesla has started to open up their charging network to other manufacturers and we see the rapid deployment of the V4 stations coming soon, I'm actually more interested now than I was before on more traditional voltages with EVs, because this is going to be designed exactly for those superchargers and that faster charging that we find over there. Peak charging rates are going to be a little bit below the Tesla Model X, right in line with the Rivian R1S, but compatibility with the supercharger network, that is definitely going to be important. Worth noting though, we don't have the native connector for the Tesla supercharging network yet. It's coming at some point later. And we don't have direct access via a factory-supported adapter yet. And you do find that in the Rivian lineup. Now, outside of those options, you could look at something like a Mercedes-Benz EQS. It's going to be a lot more expensive. And there are going to be some upcoming three-row EVs soon. For instance, we're going to find the Volkswagen ID Buzz coming on sale a little bit later this year. But this, it's nothing like an ID Buzz. This really is the future of Volvo. It's all of the Volvo-ness, all of the Volvo interior functionality and features and design that honestly shoppers have really been gravitating towards in an electric package with even more performance and better handling than ever before. Of course, you want to know exactly how it handles and feels out on the road. You're gonna have to wait until that video comes out a little bit later. But at the moment, I can definitely tell you, just check out the spec sheets and check out my video on the Polestar 3 that gives you a little bit of a window into what the EX90 is going to be like. Not everybody is going to be happy with the more traditional interior, and that's lovely because you can go buy something else. But at the moment, the XC90 is the second best-selling luxury three-row in the United States. And I think it's not without reason. It looks great, it's fun to drive, and it's really comfortable on the inside. This has all of that with 300 miles of range and even more power on tap, 510 ponies. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section, and stay tuned because the full video, that's coming up soon.